morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Wednesday, July 31st, 2024. It is 9:06 a.m. This session is set to go until 12 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm a commissioner for District 1. To my left is Commissioner Emily Klaus. Via Zoom is Vice Chair Wayne Fournier and Chair Ty Menser, as well as Commissioner Gary Edwards, are excused for this meeting. Also in the boardroom, we have County Manager Leonard Hernandez, as well as Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell and Assistant County Manager Rob Gelder. And we have staff here today to present the Water and Sewer General Facility Charge Study. And it was like practice all over again. I haven't done it in a while. It's just, you know.
And we're pleased to have our Public Works team here, leadership out in the audience. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager with Public Works. I'm here today with Joe Plahuta, who is our Senior Water Resources Engineer, tasked with the water and sewer utilities. Also, via Zoom, we have two of our supporting consultants from FCS Group, Zach Hazel and Tagi Auger, on board. So we'll just get rolling. Thank you. You want to drive, actually. So Joe and I are going to tag team this presentation today, so we'll be passing back and forth. But just some background, we're here today to present results of a recent study on the Water and Sewer General Facility Charge, or GFCs, prior to incorporating proposed adjustments during the 2024-2025 midterm budget process. With both the boards and the Water and Sewer Utility Advisory's support, we have made significant strides over the last few years in positioning our water and sewer utilities for long-term financial success. We have taken an in-depth look at operational and infrastructure needs for the coming years and have planned accordingly to address identified needs. In 2023, the board finalized consolidation of the various water and sewer utilities into a single water and a single sewer utility, creating both operational and financial efficiencies for the utilities. Consolidation took effect January 1 of 2024. Following the consolidation model, the board adopted water and sewer rates to provide consistency and stability for customers in our various service areas and to fund the operational needs of the utilities in order to provide excellent service to our customers. Evaluating the utilities' general facility charges is an extension of our effort to plan well for the future of the utilities and set them up for long-term financial and operational stability. Thank you. So just real briefly, the agenda for today, we're going to provide an overview, high-level overview of what a GFC is and the legal basis for the GFC. We'll give a little background on the Thurston County utilities. We'll talk about why updating the GFCs is important. Joe will discuss the GFC calculation methodology and provide some local comparisons. We'll talk about our community engagement efforts for this, which were robust, and we will talk about the proposed adjustment and the implementation of those. So in simple terms, we can think of long-term financial success of the utilities being supported by two financial pillars. The first pillar being the user rates that the board adopted previously, which support operational needs and some replacement of existing infrastructure. And the second pillar being adequate GFCs, which are essentially a buy-in to the system, as well as the vehicle to offset the future expansion needed to support the additional demands caused by the connection or connections. In the absence of right-sized GFCs, future expansion needs caused by growth of the system is not adequately funded. This is growth paying for growth. Excellent. Thank you. As mentioned, the board consolidated the water and sewer utilities effective January 1 of this year and set rates based on a postage stamp model, meaning that over the next few years, user rates for all customers will become consistent and volatility among some smaller service areas will be eliminated. Similar to how user rates were not consistent prior to consolidation, GFCs are still being charged differently depending upon the area being served. While GFCs, much like user rates, should be evaluated and adjusted on a regular basis, the GFCs for our utilities are significantly outdated and have not been adjusted since the establishment of the Grand Mountain utilities in the late 1990s. So we're about 25 years without having a serious look at these. In 2023, during the consolidation process, the county contracted with the FCS Group, which is a leading financial consultant for utilities, to evaluate the actual future needs of the utilities and determine adequate GFCs based on those planned needs. As the board may recall, FCS is a consultant that assisted us with the rate modeling previously adopted by the board. So as previously mentioned, adequate GFCs ensure we have sufficient capital to fund future improvements to our water and sewer utilities. This prevents the cost of expansion from being passed on to our existing customer base and ensures that growth is paying for growth rather than the cost of that growth being passed on to existing customers. It enables our utility to be self-sufficient and not reliant on external funding sources. And it helps us comply with regulatory obligations by delivering clean water to our residents, to businesses, the Chehalis River, and the Puget Sound. And lastly, the simplified connection fee structure aligns with utility consolidation. So at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Joe, who will talk about the methodology for determining the GFCs.
All right, thank you, Tim. So I'm going to speak to this at a high level, and FCS can support any more in the weeds questions, but Tim mentioned what a GFC is, also mentioned that it is prescriptive in the RCW, the methodology for calculating a GFC. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that methodology is. So at a very high level, the general facility charge is eligible capital cost divided by applicable capacity. So, breaking that down a little bit further, we have two components of eligible capital cost: existing system cost and future capital cost. So existing system cost is, investments in our existing infrastructure investment. So all the pipes, pumps, plant that we currently have in service. Future capital projects are everything that's on our CIP, as well as additional projects that are identified in any of our planning documents. So in the case of our utilities, those are our water system plans, our general sewer and wastewater facility plan. Future capital projects are broken down further into expansion projects. So those are projects that serve growth and provide additional capacity to our water and sewer systems. And then there's replacement projects. So those would be replacing assets that are old and at the end of their service life.
I'm trying to let it sink in, I'm sorry.
So the latter piece, and I'm going to speak to this a little bit, but not go in great depth, can be broken up into rate-funded capital and then capital that we're funding through a general facility charge. So basically, the piece that we would fund through the general facility charge when a new customer connects to the system, that would be either the difference in cost between the existing cost of the asset and it's replacing and the new asset, plus any improvements that we're doing to increase capacity. And again, as Tim mentioned, the goal there is that the GFC is capturing the capital cost necessary to service growth so that we aren't passing along capital costs that are serving growth to our existing ratepayer base. And then applicable capacity, that's just the capacity of our utilities following completion of our capital program. Commissioner McGee.
I'm so sorry, Jeff. I'm so lost.
The take-home message, if I will, is that this calculation is based on real needs of the utility and not arbitrary.
Okay.
So we're trying to establish an amount of capital necessary to service new growth, and then make sure that new growth is both, contributing to that capital necessary to sustain itself, the growth, plus buying into the existing system so that they're paying their fair share relative to the existing customer base. So when, an existing customer has either paid a GFC already or has paid through a ULID contribution, a Utility Local Improvement District contribution, so they've bought in to the assets in the system, whereas a new customer hasn't done that yet. So the GFC is in part formulated to allow them to buy into that existing infrastructure and then to provide that, that marginal amount of capital more necessary to provide additional capacity in the system to serve that growth.
So do existing customers pay in like less, or does it all equal out to where existing customer, like, do they pay that marginal growth cost as well? Or once you're in and you don't have to?
They do not pay that. They're
Okay.
just paying their rates. So this is only for new connections to the system or an existing connection that's increasing their demand or their capacity somehow.
It's prospective for new customers.
Okay.
And anyone who's already paid to connect to the system is just paying their rates. for
Okay.
the
One-time
service.
charge.
Okay,
And this could be, it's analogous to an impact fee. Like we have park impact fees, transportation impact fees, school impact fees. This would be similar in its purpose and function.
thank you.
So going a little bit more, you have the next slide up?
Yep, got it.
Okay, perfect. Into the calculation methodology, so looking at existing system costs, again, I'll cover this at a really high level. They're calculated as the original cost of all of the assets in our system, plus the interest calculated on those assets. Now, you might be wondering, well, if we don't have debt service or debt finance assets, why are we including interest? That is a mechanism in the RCW that allows us to basically capture the opportunity cost that we would have had investing that money elsewhere had we not invested it in infrastructure. And then any construction work on utility capital projects that's in progress, that's considered existing capital in the system. And then we subtract out of that existing cost basis calculation any contributed capital. And in the case of our utilities, that would include any grant revenue. The big one for us is real estate excise tax revenue. That would be considered contributed capital, so that gets subtracted out of our existing cost basis. And then, similar to the contributed interest being added in on our existing projects, any interest on contributed capital, so REIT-funded projects, has to be excluded from that calculation.
Robin?
So my question's not about the calculation. My question is about who pays this fee? Is this charged to the developer? Okay, so if I, as just a private person, owned a house in Grand Mound, I couldn't just decide to sign up and pay these fees, or could I?
If you owned a house in Grand Mound that was eligible to connect in our service area,
In the
then
service
you would
area,
pay a GFC.
I could do this? Otherwise, developers are paying.
Typically, it's developers. So, if a tract development goes in a subdivision, they'll be purchasing GFCs for each of the lots on that side.
Thank you.
All right, next slide, please. All right, the second component of that cost basis is planned project costs. And so for the case of our utilities, this includes all of our water and sewer capital improvement projects. So everything that appears on the capital improvement plan. In addition, we have planned projects specifically for our wastewater utility that are beyond the planning horizon of the CIP, so they're beyond that 6-year timeframe. We are also capturing those project costs in this GFC amount, because those are projects that are going to be necessary within, say, the next 10 years in order to service growth, specifically in the Grand Mound service area. And then again, the denominator, estimated system capacity. that is the per equivalent residential unit capacity of the system following completion of the capital program. So the way this works out for our utilities, specifically for our water utility, so again, this is the consolidated water utility, so all of our service areas. We have existing capital cost of all infrastructure in the system of roughly $20 million. We have a planned project cost on the water side of, roughly 2.4 million. And then, following completion of those projects, we will be able to provide capacity for approximately 3,200 equivalent residential units. So that works out to about $6,900 per equivalent residential unit. Commissioner Klaus.
So I'm just curious, can you elaborate a little bit on the difference between applicable capacity and estimated system capacity?
Applicable capacity.
On page 6, applicable capacity seems really close to the definition of estimated system capacity on page 8.
So, in applicable capacity, in the case of, if you only had replacement projects that didn't increase system capacity, applicable capacity would just be your existing capacity in the system. Mm-hmm. If we are including future cost components, it is that estimated system capacity following completion of those projects.
Okay, perfect.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
So for the sewer side, similar process. We have an existing cost basis in our sewer utility of roughly $20 million planned project costs. And this is largely due to improvements in Grand Mound to increase capacity of our sewer treatment system to accommodate growth is roughly $16.8 million. And then we divide that by the 2,900 ERU capacity following those improvements to get a per ERU general facility charge of $12,600 approximately. So this slide shows a comparison of the calculated maximum GFC amount per the study relative to some of our adjacent jurisdictions. So if you look all the way at the bottom, you can see where we're currently at for the Grand Mound GFC. So that's combined water and sewer. We're pretty low relative to Tenino, Yelm, Tumwater, Olympia, and Lacey. If we look at the top, this is the Boston Harbor utility, we're relatively high relative to adjacent purveyors. This study introduces a GFC that is really somewhere in the middle of Lacey and Olympia. And that's, again, a combined water and sewer connection charge.
So if it were to be just water or just sewer, would that cost come down, or is it?
It would be, and the sewer, so this is the additive of water and sewer. The sewer alone is roughly 12,600, and the water is 6,900 approximately. So yeah, if a connection were to be made to just the water system, for example, they would only pay that water GFC amount. I'll hand it back to Tim to talk about our community engagement efforts.
Thank you, Joe. So similar to our approach, whenever we do a rate adjustment, we go out to the community, we go out to our utility advisory committee, put the information out there, solicit feedback. On the recommendation of our county manager, we made that a little bit more robust in this case and reached out directly to the development community as well for feedback. So we started by creating a web page on our utility site that had specific information to the GFCs, what they are, and what the proposed adjustments are for the utilities, so that we could then point the community and our ratepayers to that information. Communications were mailed to our existing customers that informed them of the proposal and directed them to that web page. In addition, our partners in the development community were called directly and offered outreach and information to fit the needs of their organizations. So for Chehalis Tribal Enterprises, which is a major player in our Grand Mound service area, as well as Olympia Master Builders, as well as the Building Industry Association of Washington, their contacts were all received a call and a conversation about what we are proposing, along with an offer to meet them where they are, to visit them, provide more information to them, or to just point them to the direction, to the webpage for more information. As far as the Olympia Master Builders and the Building Industry Association, their points of contact further dispersed that information out to their stakeholders, soliciting feedback for that. And the Chehalis tribe reached out to their community development department, who called and had some questions and gave us a great opportunity to explain what we were proposing. In all cases, we didn't receive any feedback that was not supporting the proposal from the development community, and they seem to understand the purpose and the need of what you're doing. Additionally, whenever there is an adjustment like this, we utilize our Utility Advisory Committee, the Thurston County Utility Advisory Committee, which is comprised of elected representatives from all of the water and sewer service areas. They were allowed the opportunity to review the GFC study and the proposed adjustments, and have gone on record as supporting the adjustments. So in terms of implementation, as mentioned during the introduction, we are planning on kind of following that consolidation model and proposing these adjustments as part of the midterm budget process. So those will be incorporated into our proposal for the midterm budget. And then, should they be adopted, we are proposing to, similar to our other charges across our utilities, adjust the future GFCs annually based on local consumer cost indices. So once they're there will be an inflationary adjustment similar to our other charges within the utility. So with that, we would open it up to any questions the board may have.
Questions? I have a question. I might have missed it, so apologies if I'm asking you to repeat information, but the presentation you gave is a really good overview of like the definitions and what all of this is, but I'm not seeing like where are we falling short and what's the need? Typically, like there might be some sort of chart that's like, here's where we're at and here's what the cost is and this is where we need to be in however many years or months. Can you maybe touch on that a little bit?
I think we could definitely work that information up on
Okay.
using our existing GFC and then our planned capital program and looking at that budget shortfall that we
Okay.
have with planned growth.
That would be helpful for me.
We'll work on getting that put together.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fournier? Oh. Lost him. Okay. Okay. Questions for me? Thank you so much.
And
Thank
you
you.
need any action? This is just information at this
Correct.
time? Okay.
Information only.
So what are the next steps for this?
Next steps would be to provide the information on the shortfalls, and then we will go ahead and go through the steps of incorporating this into the midterm budget cycle.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and take a break. We'll take a break for 10 minutes and see if we have commissioner join us so we can get a quorum. So 9:32, we'll be back around 9:45.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Good morning. We are back from break. It is 9:45, and we will be picking up with draft 2025 through 2030 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. And hand it to Matt and Becky.
Good morning, Board of County Commissioners. My name is Matt Unsman. I'm the county engineer, and I'm joined by Becky Kahn, who is the county traffic engineer. Today, we'll be presenting the 2025-2030 Transportation Improvement Program, otherwise known as the TIP. There's no decision needed at the end of this presentation, but the Board of County Commissioners is required by RCW and WAC to adopt a 6-year transportation program prior to adopting the budget in November or December. There are 8 chapters in the TIP. In this presentation, I'll quickly present the highlights from each chapter, but we're going to focus on projects and how they're prioritized and ultimately how they are included in the TIP. Some quick things to know about the TIP. The TIP is a planning document which guides the transportation improvements for the next 6 years. It's updated annually. It satisfies the legislative requirements that I'll be talking about shortly. There is a public improvement process in the form of a public hearing. And once adopted, the TIP satisfies the legislative requirements for transportation growth management and for the distribution of state and federal dollars for transportation projects. So Chapter 1 of the TIP. Chapter 1 provides all of the legal and regulatory requirements behind the TIP that guide our transportation program. I'm not going to go through each requirement due to our limited time today. But some of the highlights include the Board of County Commissioners must annually adopt a 6-year transportation program that includes a prioritized list of projects showing the cost and funding sources. It needs to include an annual road program, which is just basically the first of the 6-year transportation plan. The plan must also include any critical findings that are included in our annual bridge index, and I'll go into that towards the end of the presentation. Chapter 2 includes all of the funding sources for the projects in the TIP. Funding sources include the road levy portion of the property tax, the state gas tax, transportation impact fees, REIT funding, federal and state grants. Typically, we use smaller amounts of local funds to leverage much larger amounts of federal and state funding. And as you know from the recent Green Cove projects, sometimes it takes a lot of different funding sources to fully fund a large project. So Chapter 3 provides a 6-year look at revenue and expenditures of the road fund. This chapter also provides a summary of fees collected and the amounts used for transportation projects, which is required per county code. You'll get an opportunity to review the final numbers during your review of the Public Works budget. Chapter 4 of the TIP, projects included on the TIP arrive through a vigorous prioritization process. There are 9 programs that prioritize projects in the TIP. We have an ADA program, a bridge program, a capacity or a traffic congestion program, a culvert program, a fish passage program, a highway safety improvement program, maintenance and operations program, a pavement preservation program, and a pedestrian and bicyclist program. Each one of these programs has unique criteria that is used to prioritize projects from that specific program. As an example, we'll use the bridge program. So some of the criteria that are included in evaluating projects for the bridge program include: what is the condition of the bridge? Is the bridge scour critical, meaning how susceptible is that bridge to failure during high flow events? Does the project have secured funding already? What is the priority of the route that the bridge is on? Is it an arterial roadway, collector, or local roadway? And then how much traffic volume is that bridge carrying? As much as possible, we try to include projects from all of the programs on the TIP so that when different pots of money become available, we usually have a project in the queue that's ready to compete for the funding. Chapter 5 of the TIP is the annual work program. The annual work program is required to be submitted to the County Road Administration Board every year per WAC 13616. Commissioner Mejia is very familiar with this because she has to, she's part of the board that eventually approves it. The annual work program is essentially the first year of the 6-year transportation improvement program. It's just the list of projects that we plan on working on in the upcoming year. Occasionally, you'll see staff requesting approval from the Board of County Commissioners to amend the program when unplanned projects occur and require immediate action and need to be added to the work, the annual work plan.
Can you provide an example of that?
Emergency projects. So you have a landslide. What's our last landslide? We have so many. How am I? Chain Hill landslide 2 years ago. We had to come back and asked to put it on there. And actually, last year we also had to add the State Route 507 and Vale Road roundabout because the state provided us.
Thank you for taking care of Chain Hill.
We got you, buddy. Chapter 6. So Chapter 6 contains the list of projects that Public Works plans on working on in the next 6 years. We've added 5 projects that were prioritized through a variety of programs that were added to the TIP this year. They include Morris Road from 133rd to 143rd. That's part of our, that was prioritized through our preservation program. If you drive that section of road, you'll know why. 61st Avenue at Fry Cove was prioritized through the Fish Passage program. The Green Cove Fish Barrier, Phase 2, we've presented this to you before. That's providing fish passage studies at the intersections of 36th Avenue and Kaiser Road. The Meridian and Mullen Road intersection was added to address a collision history that's occurring out there, as well as with all the development occurring in that portion of Lacey and the UGA, we need to make some capacity improvements as well. And then Kellogg Drive, which was presented to you yesterday as a road closure for an upcoming project. That's an emergency project that needed to be added. So I was going to go through a bunch of projects, but the CIP the CIP presentation last week kind of stole all the thunder from my presentation. So I'm not going to go through the individual projects. So we're going to jump to Chapter 7 of the TIP. Chapter 7 of the TIP is focused on the 20-year capacity project list, which is also the list of projects included in our 20-year list in our comprehensive plan, as well as the list we use for transportation impact fees. These projects are required to keep us in compliance with the requirements established in the growth management plan. And then Chapter 8. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time discussing this chapter. The Washington Administrative Code requires counties to submit written reports of bridge inspection efforts as well as any findings. We're federally required to inspect any bridge that is longer than 20 feet long. And we have to do that every 2 years. We have 104 bridges in the county that are longer than 20 feet, but we have, from a risk management perspective, chose to inspect all of 150 bridges in our inventory. Last year, we performed 99 bridge inspections. And a little bit more information about our bridge inventory is 17 bridges in our inventory have exceeded the theoretical lifespan of 75 years. 9 of the 17 bridges that have exceeded 75 years were built in the 1920s or earlier. So that means that they're more than 100 years old, that's old for a bridge. 19 of our bridges are considered scour critical. And all that means is that if we have a flood event or a high flow event, those bridges are susceptible to the foundations being compromised. 19 of our bridges are functionally obsolete, which simply means that they're structurally safe, but they have constraints due to roadway geometries, such as lacking pedestrian and bicycle facilities, or they don't even have enough travel lanes. But the good news is that we don't have any structurally deficient bridges, meaning that none of our bridges are an immediate risk of failure. This year, in terms of maintenance, we're repairing the approaches to the Black Lake Bridge. That project, we're supposed to complete pile driving this week. And that will repair the approaches that have settled more than 2 feet since the bridge was installed in 1992 due to poor soils. The Bridge Index also prioritizes bridge replacement priorities. The top recommendation is the Little Rock Road Bridge over Bloom's Ditch. The good news is we're going to be coming to the board here in the next month or so, requesting permission to do a project that's fully funded with federal and transportation impact fees to replace that bridge, as well as add a left turn lane right there on Little Rock Road at 113th Avenue. That bridge replacement is significant because it's very similar to the bridge that failed in 2014. That's about a mile north of this location over Salmon Creek. And when we did the demolition of that bridge, it was discovered that there was actually no reinforcement in that bridge, which is why it failed. Our other 2 identified bridge replacement priorities include the Yelm Highway Bridge over the railroad tracks near the Amtrak station, as well as the Tilley Road Bridge over Beaver Creek. We've applied for federal funding for the design and right-of-way phase for the Tilley Road Bridge replacement. We should find out this fall in whether or not we're successful in getting funding to advance that project. But that's a timber bridge that was built in the 1950s. Timber tends not to do well in our climate. It actually tends to deteriorate quite quickly. So, the end of the presentation, next steps. So, next steps include holding a public hearing to receive public comment, and Public Works will be recommending that you adopt the TIP prior to approving the budget. And with that, we're ready to answer any questions.
Can we stop sharing the screen? Thank you. Any questions, comments? No, none. Great job. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well then that concludes the Draft Transportation Improvement Program. Next on our agenda is commissioner items. Are there any commissioner items?
I don't have any.
Okay. Mr. Fournier? No? Okay then, it is 9:59 and thank you all. Is Commissioner Fournier on the top of the fire truck?
No, I'm on top of the world.
Oh, of course. Sorry.
I'm on top of a hospital.
Okay, it is 9:59. We are adjourned. Thank you all.